Thank you everyone for joining us at the California STEAM Symposium. It is my pleasure to welcome you to our session, Engaging Science-Focused Instructional Leaders with Resources in CAPSME K-8 Repository, with our lead presenters, Jan Robertson and Mandy Smith. If you have any questions for our presenters, we welcome you to share them in the chat. If you would like to join us on screen to ask your question, please use the raise hand feature and then turn on your audio and video on Zoom, and we will try to get to as many questions as possible. Thank you to all of our sponsors for supporting this year's symposium, especially our presenting sponsor, Chevron. We invite you to learn more about our partners in the sponsors tab on the platform. At the end of the session, we will share a survey link in the chat. Please take a moment and fill it out, and we appreciate all the feedback, and you could win some cool prizes. Now I will turn it over to our presenters.
Hi, Lisa. So I'm going to share my screen. So welcome. This is kind of odd, Lisa, but you know me, I'm Jan Robertson, and I was the co-director of a cohort 1 grant that started this work. And I'm happy to have my colleague, Mandy Smith, who was part of our grant, and she and I have been doing professional development and working on projects for many, many years together. And I'm just really happy that she's been able to help me with this work. So we'll take you through. We do have a bit.ly, which is in the chat, and the bit.ly will link you to our slides, which then will link you to all of the other pieces of our work. Okay, and again, welcome Lisa, Mandy. Lisa works at West Ed, and she's been a really great supporter of me and the work that we've been doing. So you're going to have quite the personal presentation here, it looks like.
Okay. Very much, Jan and Mandy.
We'll do our best to keep it engaging here. Okay, so we got, I feel like, hang on, my slides aren't changing. There we go. So we want to thank our partners. I've been really happy to be part of the California Partnership with Math and Science for the past, I think it's 7 years. I came in as a member of the Instructional Leadership Corps through Stanford and CTA, and Mandy has as well. And we've had support from the California Science Project. So it's just been a really, really fabulous team of supporters who have allowed me to work with districts and to help folks much like Mandy, who's now a TOSA in a district. And all the work it's been fun for us and giving us some other opportunities. Hello, Karen. What our work did is we provided 27 teachers and teacher leaders who were in ideally the instructional leadership program. And we also had funds from CSP, the California Science Project, and Maria Samani and I put together this project with the hopes of completing a really fabulous lesson repository for science lessons that was started through the CAPSME project. Teachers really were the impetus of the project. They provided lessons, units. The goal was to help turn hands-on lessons into distance learning lessons. And there's been quite a bit of work on this. So we decided that great curriculum usually is created by teachers, and at least we want them to test it and pilot it and look at it. So that's what this repository is all about. The repository is not completed, but we've made some great strides to get the repository going. And we hope that it becomes a really useful tool. So I've applied for a grant, and I'm hoping to get phase 2 or cohort 2 so that we can actually finish it and use it for teachers. So stay tuned on that one. Okay. Our biggest, we've taken into consideration so many things. Great pedagogy, it's NGSS aligned. Again, I think teacher input's really important, but that's not the only piece. Someone has to oversee the work and make sure that it's aligned correctly. And all of our 27 teachers that participated in our Cadre 1 were really high quality. And they loved working on the grant because people were lonely. They were working in isolation at home. And we found we had a really, really high quality, fun, caring community. And Mandy can talk a little bit about that as well. Okay. Sorry. Let me see, I skipped a slide. So in order to get to this repository, we're going to take you through with slides rather than going to the live link. In the chat, there is a bit.ly to our slideshow that will take you to all these places, but the repository lives on the CAPSME website. And by clicking, you would get to the next page, which is this. So you'd hunt for science. It's fortunate it's a math and science project. So teachers, it's kind of a 2-for-1. They're going in there, they could find a math lesson and then they could find a science lesson. And we know that science is being a lot of times not taught and left behind. So our hope is to give really good lessons that could be taught distance learning or in the classroom. So these are flip-floppy. They can go either way. And in my opinion, anytime there's been work where teachers have tested, vetted, and we have some tools that we help them vet the lessons with, they really get better. So many of these lessons are fabulous, and some of our buckets are a little empty. So that's why we're hoping for a cohort 2 to finish up the work. But again, really pleased with the commitment of the teachers. And even if they use the lessons, it helped them, I think, get through last year. We met 5 or 6 times. There was just this really nice community of practice, and we were all over the state. So advantages of distance learning do exist. People who'd known each other in ILC, we would meet regularly in person over the past 7 years, but no, people weren't seeing one another. And it was a really good way to collaborate. So I had a lot of fun doing this grant. It was a blast. And we had such lovely people, and it sort of restores your faith. Teachers are teaching science that want to, they're really smart, and they're rearing to go. So click on the buckets. We're going to talk today about a 4th grade lesson and showing you how organized it is. And it's really like click and go. And Mandy has taught these lessons and looked at them really in depth, and she's still doing work on that. So I'm going to let her speak to that. Okay.
Hi, good morning. I'm Mandy Smith. I'm a STEM TOSA for Mount Diablo Unified School District. During our distance learning, I actually was co-teaching a 5th grade class. So it was really, as Jan said, it was really an important project to be a part of. I got to speak with people in LA all the way up through Reading that I would not have been able to collaborate with had it not been a distance learning. So it was just really nice. I still have those relationships today. One of the tools that we were given before we started was this lesson analysis tool. And so it not only looked at the science, the DCIs, and the engineering, the SEPs, but it also took us through what was the SEL strategies. We looked at the distance learning standards. We looked at the social justice standards just to see how we could incorporate as much as we could into the lessons that we were doing.
And I might add, this is a sort of a new tool. We aren't showing you the whole thing, but this was in collaboration with Maria Samani and the California Science Project. And we were both thrilled. I mean, this is what she does, great work like this. And I'm more of the practical person, but the teachers love this tool. They used it like 3 and 4 times on their lessons. And it was the first time it kind of made sense once they learned all the buckets. So this is a new and useful and not too complex tool that we found to be useful. So we want this thing to stay alive. It was a really good tool for looking at curriculum in a different way. You ready for the next slide, Mandy?
Yes, I just want to add, so on the side where it says suggestions for adaptations and modifications, that gave us the most conversation when we met with our cohort, because we all take curriculum and as teachers, we kind of pull it apart so we could use it best in our classroom, right? Especially if you're a seasoned teacher. And we actually felt really like we were listened to, because we put the suggestions, we put adaptations, we could talk to each other like, this didn't work for me, this worked for me. How do you make this work for your students when we were all distance learning? And I went back hybrid in the middle of all of this. Because sometimes, you get a curriculum and people just want you to do it verbatim. So it was really nice to have that green section there, suggestions for adaptations or modifications. Okay, Jan, go ahead.
Okay.
We'll go forward. Yeah, keep going. I think a couple more. So I chose to do the 4th grade lesson. It's on waves and ocean structures. And just so you have some background for it, it's a true newspaper article. So it not only covered some standards for 4th and 5th grade, 3rd grade also, it also covered quite a few of our ELA. And it was a good practice for our CAST testing that was coming up. We were able to use 2 nonfiction newspaper articles regarding a tanker that fell off a ship, and it ended up being full of Doritos. And so you'll see we did almost a 3-act math task. I'm the math coach also for the district, so I was very familiar with that set, but I was really pleased to see how it crossed over into science for us also. So here was my first analysis of the tool. It was also very nice. We did, the black font you see is my first initial observation without having to teach the lesson yet. And then after we taught the lesson, we actually went back through the tool. So all of my reflection pieces are in blue after that. It was just a really nice journaling piece as a teacher to see how our thinking may have changed for ourselves, which is what we're trying to get our students to do.
And just as a side note, the tool has many more domains to it. This is just a snapshot, which we collected from all the teachers, but we've given you links so you could find this. Okay.
So when you get into the repository, the nice thing is for teachers, it's already been put on a slide deck. So you can teach this. I've taught this actually all year. I've taught this lesson now 18 times to various grades. I just think I used it at the beginning of the year in person as an introduction into journaling, into how we keep a science journal and how we revise our thinking. But when I was, smack in the middle of distance learning, the slides were already made for me. They were also in a Google slide format, so I could actually make a copy and edit anything I wanted, which, again, that's really important so that you could change however you need. They also had student handouts. And again, my students did not get color handouts, but I was able to drop everything also into Google Classroom. So it just made the transition really seamless. So the first lesson that they take you through is you see this beach, you see a very narrow snapshot of just some Doritos and a woman on the beach. And so if you notice at the bottom, that's the journaling portion of it. What do you notice? What do you wonder? And again, this crosses over so nice with what we're doing in math right now. We start every problem with what do we notice? What do we wonder? And I work also at a STEM school. So we now have a journal for the whole school. We do everything all day long. What do you notice? What do you wonder? Jan, can you go to the next slide, please? And so I just dropped in some of my student artifacts. So some students were able to type into Google Classroom and turn it in that way. But I also allowed students that were more comfortable writing in a journal. So we did like a 2-column note, as you can see, and then they could take a picture with their Chromebook and turn it in. This caused so much conversation. I have to tell you, this one lesson was only supposed to be 30 minutes long. My entire class, with the exception of 2 students, are English language learners. And I had to, this took me 3 days to get through, if you could believe it, because they were arguing and justifying and everything we wanted them to do. It was, I had to laugh and just cut the conversation so we could keep moving. But so at first we came to some sort of a consensus. We noticed red and blue, bags on the beach. We thought someone was cleaning up. We had 2 kind of main streams going. Some kids thought there was a party and some kids thought it must have been for a Doritos commercial. They weren't quite sure yet what was happening. So if we go forward, it takes you through a series of slides. And this is why I relate it to a 3-act math test. They start really narrow and then they start broadening the pictures. And this is in the middle. So now not only are you talking about what you notice, what you wonder, but what evidence from the picture can you use to support your thinking? And so we got it down into, there is this shipping container and it either fell off a truck, they must have thought, or because we live near the Port of Oakland, they've all seen those cranes. They thought maybe a crane dropped it on the beach. They weren't quite sure yet. And then we talk about avenues, like how do things ship? How do we transport goods from place to place? And so we talked about trains, we talked about cargo ships, we talked about also, trucks. And now we wanted to know what phenomena, though, could have caused this. And it was so much debate, I have to tell you. We finally came to 2 things. Either there was a storm and a container fell off a ship, or there was still some kids were holding on to that crane. They thought maybe the crane malfunctioned and it swung the container and dropped it over. After we do all of this reading or all of this conversation, there's 2 close reads that we did. So we used the 3-read protocol. My class is very familiar with this. We do it with a lot of things. And so we started out, what does the text say? How does it say? And why is this text important? And we did this for 2 articles that we had. Jan, if you can go to the next one. And then after we read the articles using the 3-read protocol as a class, now in the middle of this, like I said, my students came back hybrid. So I had half of my students 2 days a week, and we charted what we'd been talking about in the morning. So we talked about main idea, the summary of the articles. Some fishermen had found this container, they broke it open, they took as many Doritos as they can, and they just left the container there. But if you go to the side of my chart that says how we think this happened, I started being able to pick up a lot of vocabulary from my students. So one student said the container drifted in an ocean current, and tide, drift, current were some students were familiar, but quite a few students didn't understand what those terms meant. And specifically because I have students that I had about 12 languages in my classroom last year. So this actually, all of their conversation, reading the articles, gave us a lot of context of where we could move forward into and how we could try to understand these terms a little bit better. My students, this is the first piece of handwriting I'd probably gotten from them all year long. And because we'd spent so much time talking, so much time reading, so much time annotating the text, which are all our ELA standards, right? I got such good writing from this. I mean, there's a couple of grammar things, that I might want to help them clean up in here, but I was so pleased. We got whole paragraphs. A couple kids wrote 2 paragraphs. If you go to the next slide, Jan. So, I mean, I was so happy as a teacher to get this much writing for them, but they also had a lot of rich things to talk about and a lot of text to refer back to. You can see Tatiana, she's the one who said, how do I say sequencing things? And so we started talking about first, next, then. Also, we brainstormed as a class. And I was really pleased that this again felt like I was facilitating this lesson. I was not directing. They were asking for things in order to make their writing easier on themselves, and I could provide that scaffold instead of me just setting up a lesson, here we go, we're doing sequencing words and you have to throw 5 in or something. Okay. And the other thing I really enjoyed we did an analysis of student work at the end, just basic thoughts, comments. It wasn't like a huge analysis piece, but then we took our analyses and we shared them with our cohorts. And in the middle of all of this, it was very interesting. All of us linked this in, I think it was the Suez Canal. Yeah, it says that on there. One of the ships got stuck there and it was full of container ships. And so it was a lot of real life things. I mean, even right now when I'm teaching it, we're kind of linking this a little bit to what's happening in Long Beach, or the Port of San Diego, where all of our ships are off and what's happening. Jan, if we go on to the next slide. So from the vocabulary that my students were missing, we made a driving question board. So they really wanted to know, what is a current and how do tides, currents, and waves work together, and what kind of waves what does it mean when a wave is created? And so the second week that we were involved in this, we were talking about how do we make waves? Like we talked about speed words, fast, slow, gentle. There's motion words of swirling back and forth. And then if we put an object in the water, how could we make that object move? And Jan, if you go to the next slide. So we socially distanced on the dots that the district had painted for us, 6 feet apart. ACE had donated to me some buckets. So they're filled with water there. And they were literally trying to make the water move, seeing how they could make waves, seeing the kind of motions they did in the buckets. So I not all of my students came back. So the other students, and I didn't include those here because I didn't have permission from their families, but they filled their bathtubs up with water or their kitchen sinks up with water, and they did the same thing in the morning. So I do feel that this set of lessons did pair itself. It was easy to teach in person, and it's very easy to teach in the classroom at the same time. It was really engaging. And if I didn't do it one day, they were begging for me, like, when are we going to do the Dorito lesson? They kept calling it. And I will admit, by the end of the lesson, I did give them all a bag of Doritos, and they got to choose, did they want Cool Ranch or nacho cheese? That was their prize for getting through this at the end. So that's about all we have. I will say I've been distance learning this year, and I've used it across our district, we have a very diverse district. I've used it. I've never had any student complain about this lesson. I mean, I am bribing them with Doritos, as I said again, but I do really feel that this is a really great bridge between math and science for the 3-act tasks. It really implements journaling. Like, how do we do effective journaling? This lesson was not about, what can I cut and paste, and literally like cutting papers out and pasting them into an interactive notebook. This was about drawing a 2 or 3 column notebook and watching our thinking change and grow and refine as we got through the lessons.
Thank you so much, Mandy. What I think is great is, I helped coordinate it and administrate this grant and got the teachers together, but we had 27 other people kind of like Mandy that were teaching the lesson. And then the groups of teachers, we tried to have 3 in each grade level. They were all teaching and collaborating and talking. It was a very easy grant to actually coordinate, because once they were in their rooms, they were talking and busy. It was like really serious work, which, as you know, I've been a curriculum person for a long time. You can't always get people to do such heavy duty thinking because they felt honored. We gave them appropriate tools. They really were on their own, and we got nothing but fabulous feedback on how helpful the work was. And I think it uplifted people in a lot of ways. Plus, it is uplifting our science lessons. I mean, Mandy is an extraordinary teacher, I can tell you that, and she knows curriculum. But to see how something like this was just we only met for a few months. There's a lot of great work to come out of something like that. So I'm really thrilled. I think we have a really good model. And Maria Samani, the director of the California Science Project, she was thrilled with the work that we were able to accomplish in a very short time. And we have, teachers who are raring to go. And if they could see modeling like this, our hope is to use these lessons or pick a couple of them with Mandy at the helm and do lesson study with teachers who are teaching this 4th grade lesson. So in person, that also helps getting people live together, but we can do it online. There's another grant that has lesson study online. There's a lot of things we could do to help support teachers if they want it. So, we're kind of at that, like, we're excited. We want to take next steps, and we're working on that.
Question for Mandy. So you were saying you've taught this multiple times, and I know every time, when I'm teaching, I learn something, and then I'm always changing things. So like the steps that were as you evolved in teaching this lesson, did you keep using the tool, suggestions and that sort of thing all along?
I will say last year, yes. This year when I've taught it, I've refined it quite a bit because I could see that some things felt redundant to me, like I was doing them over and over. I also pulled the lessons apart. So the 2 articles that we were reading, one was in the first week's lesson set, and then other was in like a week 3 lesson set. But I wanted my class to read and write to 2 sources because that's something specifically that my students struggle with on the CASP and on the CAST. So we read them, one day apart, took notes on them separately, and saw one thing that really opened my students' eyes was, there was different information in both articles. So questions that they had were not answered from just one piece of writing. They had to read both to get all of their questions answered. And so it really helped. I just really liked it was a real thing that happened, right? And it's a very fun access point. All kids know what a Dorito is, most of them. But no, to answer your question, I didn't use that tool this year. I do think that it helped me quite a lot last year when I was revising my own thinking so I could cement things into my head. But I also, Jan and I talk about this a lot. I'm not afraid to pull a curriculum apart and use it in a manner that I want to go with my students when I see what they need. So I think that tool piece, if we could share that with other, maybe brand new or pre-service teachers, that might be a good thing. I'm also using this with our pre-service teachers. So we have quite a few of them this year in my district that don't qualify for a BITSA coach because they don't have a credential as of yet. So I have time built into my day that I can meet with them. And they have also, I have 20 teachers that have also taught this lesson, because the storm that happened was a nor'easter. So I also tied this into the 3rd grade standards. We just didn't continue on with, like, you know, what a P wave is or things like that for the 4th graders.
Oh, that is really helpful. And yeah, it sounds like you've sort of internalized the tool, you know, for like, what would I change? What would I suggest? But I agree with you. I can see, especially as you're getting started pre-service, it's so nice to know what tools that sometimes it's hard to communicate that, right? Because it's so in your DNA. And so to be able to say, this is kind of like, here's a piece of my brain and what I'm thinking when I'm doing something and unpacking it. So
Right.
I appreciate you sharing your process.
Thank you.
And the tools available, I really like that. And I've been doing this kind of work for like 30 years. And sometimes the tools are too, Mandy knows, I'm not really a tool filler outer. Like I'm just big picture. So when I looked at that, I went, oh, these teachers are going to hate this. Oh no, it helped them so much organize their thinking. And, you know, it's really like, it's a usable thing, which is fabulous, because a lot of times we create things that are insane and too complicated. So this is kind of a winner. And I mean, Marie and I, our hopes are that this, whatever next steps, we can keep using it. So it's exciting. And the tool doesn't change the way people think or teach. But this was like one that kind of struck. 27 people used it multiple times. That is good feedback and super helpful. I don't know where we are at time-wise, but you've got our links.
I see Wendy's asking in the chat about
I don't even
where are they available, and that sort of goes along with what I was thinking when you were talking about the pre-service teachers. You know, is there a specific way that we can share it out with different people who are working with pre-service teachers? I'm just trying to think, how do we get the ripples of
at this point, honestly, the tool is not like, I mean, it's fine for people to look at it. I don't even know who, I don't think it's 100% ready to be shared with the planet as a pre-service tool. So I would want to talk to Maria Samani, the genius of all tools and all that sort of stuff, and see how, you know, I think we could revise it for pre-service. I think that would be fabulous. But we've made it available. It's still in draft form. So it would be used and fiddle around with, but I think that's the hopes. And Lisa and I serve on the CAPSME groups. Hopefully that's something we can tweak a little more and make it, you know, like final. So all of this was in a 1 cohort grant that is meant to be a 3-step thing. So the tool exists, but you're welcome to look at it. And it is in, you go to I'll find it for you. And Karen, I'll just send it to you. And Wendy, if you want it to, it's in our slides, but you'd have to sift through. And I don't want to close my slides and go crazy with that. So I'm going to send a copy of the tool, knowing it's kind of a drafty thing, which the whole project is drafty because it's not completed. But I feel like there's hope. You know, Mandy and I talk about that. We really try hard. We've been working in the same district for years, trying to inspire and support our teachers. And we've done some good work, but boy, keeping the momentum going is, you know, for all of us a challenge. So Wendy, if you're still there, if I can get your email, I will send you all of this stuff. I have Karen.
Great, thanks. I'll put it in the chat.
Put it in the chat and I'll send you the tool, I'll call it.
Yeah. And Jen, like you said, it's also on the CAPSME website. You can
It is on the website, isn't it?
Yeah, it says K-8 repository, and it gives you a nice explanation too, again, of like the genesis of this work and you know.
CDE Foundation, good. Well, Wendy, these are people in the room who could get some traction for our work. So this is really great.
Well, congratulations. It's exciting.
Beautiful work.
Well, good. So take a peek at the repository, knowing we're trying to get it to be spiffed up a little more. A couple of the buckets are a little empty, and we're trying to get our next round of funding so we can finish it. That's the hope. And we sure appreciate you joining us. And I'm going to put my email in here again. Most of you know me. And Mandy's was on there. Mandy, what should I add yours on?
Sure, if you want, that's great.
I mean, Mandy's actually in the school district still doing, it's Amanda, I forgot what it is.
Smith
Smith
ML at mdusd.org.
Okay, so reach out to us.
I really appreciate, Mandy, you taking us through all of that. It's just, I love when writers talk about how, their writing process, and to hear a teacher talk about the teaching process. I don't know if there's anything more beautiful. It's like seeing art on the wall, except that you're living art. So thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. I had been out of the classroom for 10 years prior to last year. And so it was such a treat for me to actually get to work with students and see how their thinking does change from day to day. And they stayed with me. I will tell you, I had 100% attendance last year and a really diligent group of kids who want to write, they want to read, they want to do interesting, fun things, right? So I'm a true believer in hands-on science as a way to help bridge the language for our academic conversations for our English language learners.